Good evening, everyone. Next month is the holiday of Hanukkah. Hanukkah means to dedicate and rededicate. We are gathered here to dedicate this amphitheater in memory of Guy Bar-Yosef, the nephew of Israel writer David Eisenberg and the son of Arlene and Ami. We also honor the Israel Ride and the many riders who made this amphitheater possible. As we know, riders' impact on the Arava Institute can always go beyond the ride. The word Hanukkah, dedicate, is related to the name Hanuch, the son of Cain, and the name of the first city. As we are talking about builders, this amphitheater was designed by our own Tal Holtzman, sitting over there. And physically built by builders from the Oats Madar that we passed on our way here a few minutes ago. Hanukkah is also related to the word Hinuch, education, what this institute is dedicated to. It's also related to the word Mechanech, educator. After being a father, being an educator was Guy's calling in life. And Honech, another word for Madrich. For so many birthright groups, Guy left a great impression on those he led and those he guided. If I may circle back to the connection of Hanukkah dedication and Hinuch education. When we dedicate something, we educate ourselves on the purpose and the meaning of a structure. This amphitheater is named for Guy Bar-Yosef, and we will learn more about him from his family momentarily, as we learn some other lessons at this dedication. This amphitheater is open on all sides, as was the tent of Abraham and Sarah, open on all sides to welcome all to their tent. A greater symbol we could not have asked for the Arava Institute and what this place represents. An institute open to all, Israelis, Palestinians, Jordanians, internationals, Christian, Muslim, Jews, and others. So how was this space first used? A couple of weeks ago, I was asked, as we often have, a student panel of our students to speak to a group. It was a group of college-age students who are in Israel for a long time. We were originally going to do it in the blue room over there where the Chalutzim have their bikes stored. It's an adequate room, but it's kind of stale and stuffy. And as we were going in there, I kind of looked back and I said, we have the amphitheater. And so we quickly set up a number of chairs here, and the group sat like all of you sat, and we did the presentation here. And it was just so wonderful to be in this space. It works so well on so many different levels. And I can imagine in the future classes being taught here. As a teacher here, I look forward to teaching classes here. I can imagine meetings taking place here, events taking place, and perhaps most important, those informal, small, informal conversations between the students as they wrestle with life, love, and politics. In all those ways, Guy will continue through this amphitheater to teach and be an educator, a mechanech, and a chonech. And in that spirit of Hanukkah, we dedicate this building. We'll now hear first from Guy's mother and then from David Eisenberg.
First of all, shalom, and thank you all for being here today, for your love of Israel and for your ongoing support of the country and the important work conducted here at the Arava Institute. To David especially, a huge and heartfelt thank you. David came into our lives in 1982, 4 years after my mom passed away and my dad married David's mother, Lori. Ours could have been merely a casual, cordial relationship, but David's love for Israel, coupled with his sense of dedication to family, faithfully nurtured the connection, so that soon we began to feel that we are truly related. His idea to donate his well-deserved prize for work on behalf of Israel to K'tu'ah and the Arava Institute in order to build this amphitheater and to dedicate it to Guy is beautiful, touching, and greatly appreciated. Sincere thanks to Amy, Aliza, and Hannah for their patience and their sensitivity to our wishes, despite never having met us, and their perseverance in getting it right for this ceremony, which is so meaningful to us. I had the privilege of being Guy's mother for 40 years. I came to Israel on the 1963-64 Young Judea Year course and met my husband Ami that year. Guy was the youngest of our 3 children and was a very special soul. One of the first times I recall noticing his powers of observation and joyous, outgoing nature occurred in 1976 when we took a family trip to the USA. Guy was 3 years old. We went to SeaWorld in California, and after the dolphins performed, little Guy stood up on the bench, clapped his hands, and gleefully yelled out, "Kol hakavod." It was hilarious. His personality was magnetic, and as soon as he would come home, the house would be full. He had about 1 million friends, and our home was where they always chose to gather, sit out in the yard, discuss any and all topics, or just chill. It surprised us later that he remained so close to many of his childhood friends, despite his taking on so many new religious, home, and family obligations, and the varying geographical distances separating them as they all pursued their adult lives. He served as a paramedic in the Army and loved that he could help people in pain. After the Army, he spent time in India and began his spiritual quest there. Upon his return, my father, who was a conservative rabbi in the U.S., said to him, "Why look for spiritual inspiration there? Stick to your own roots. Judaism has it all." Those words struck a chord with Guy. Knowing that it would take many years to become a doctor if he opted for medical school, Guy decided to study acupuncture and herbal medicine in the Galilee at a school founded by Rabbi Yuval Asherov, a renowned nutritionist who wanted to enable people to study holistic medicine in a religious atmosphere, influenced by teachings of the Rambam. Guy told me after his interview, "I planned to ask Rav Yuval questions, but he answered everything before I even opened my mouth. There's only one truth, and something he said went straight to my heart, like an arrow." From that day on, Guy began his religious quest, which was always more spiritual than dogmatic. By the end of his studies, he had begun wearing a kippah and praying. He met Inbar, also a student at the school, and they began their religious practices together. After he and Inbar married, he began to realize that acupuncture treatments weren't enough to support a growing family. So since he had been a paramedic in the Army and had a license to carry a weapon, he began escorting youth groups on trips around Israel. Seeing how he connected so beautifully with young people, the sponsors of these groups, particularly those in Nifty, suggested to him that he take a tour guide's course and get an official license. He took a 2-year course at the University of Haifa in conjunction with the Ministry of Tourism and passed with flying colors. He began working with students and birthright groups, devoting heart and soul to this endeavor. He was extremely sought after, sometimes doing 2 or 3 or 4 10-day stints back to back. We so admired Inbar's understanding, patience, and amazing ability to cope with the children and household on her own. His influence on these young tourists was profound, and many of his birthrighters came back later to study or work in Israel, some even making Aliyah. He was very proud of that. In the winter of 2012, Guy felt something like a marble in his throat. It wasn't painful, but annoying. So he said he would deal with it after the birthright season. By the spring, it had grown so large that he could barely swallow. And when he came to spend Pesach with us, we insisted that he get it checked. A biopsy showed it to be an extremely virulent form of lymphoma, which quickly became leukemia. The shock was enormous, beyond belief. One of the first things Guy said to the doctors was, "How can you tell me I'm so sick? I climbed Masada 10 times this year." He began very aggressive, debilitating chemotherapy treatments, which went on for 9 months. His outlook was positive the entire time. His doctor, the nurses, and staff all adored him, and one day when the doctors told him something he was not happy to hear, his response was, "Only God will decide when I'm leaving this earth, not the doctors." He told us that we looked more worried than he, and insisted that God can reverse any decree at any moment in time. He demanded that we always be happy and always remember that there is no despair in the world. He commanded us, above all, to have faith and promise not to question God's actions. Bone marrow drives were held for Guy in Israel and in various locations in the U.S. and Canada, organized in some cases by his birthrights. He said that even if a donor wasn't found for him, other lives could be saved through these drives, and he was very happy to think that. He finally underwent a bone marrow transplant in July of 2013, but was too weak by then to rally. So ironically, even though the transplant was pronounced a success, he succumbed to the disease in August, 5 days after his 40th birthday. Guy adored his wife and children and his brother and sister. He remained very close to us, his parents, despite our different religious outlooks. His in-laws loved him like a son. He loved and respected all people. He valued dialogue and open exchanges of views and did not impose his beliefs on others. There could not be a more appropriate tribute to Guy's memory than an open amphitheater, providing welcoming shade and shelter to people of all faiths from various countries and from all walks of life. A place of learning and tolerance, and a vehicle to conserve and further develop this land that he loved so very much. He's the whole poet.
It's really nice to see all of you here, and for any of you who mentioned to me earlier in the week that I seem to be good at public speaking, you're about to discover otherwise. First, I'll hide behind the chair. Lucky for me, Arlene already said a lot of what I was going to try to say. I think a key thing, Guy was very much an explorer, but ultimately it was discussions with his grandfather, my stepfather, that led him to realize that a lot of what he was looking for in his journey was things that he could find in Judaism. He taught me a lot, but as he became a devotee of the work of Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, who's the 18th century founder of Breslov Hasidim, there's two lessons that really stood out to me. One, which I think truly touches us on the Israel ride, is the importance of community. And the other was his just unending devout faith that, as he worded it, there's no despair in this world, and his belief that there's a reason for everything. He was a very popular guide. Some of the excerpts from various feedback we got from people who'd been on his birthright trips is in the materials. I took one note that was a note that we got from a young adult who was on a birthright trip. When I got off the plane and saw you with a big kippah and peyot, I thought, oh no, what are we in for? After your initial greeting to us and a couple of jokes, I knew that we'd be okay. After the 10 days we spent with you, I want you to know that I learned if I learned nothing else, I learned not to judge a Jew by the length of his payas. Guy made Israel and Judaism truly alive and vibrant. He believed, I think till the end, in the unity of our community, and always instilled a sense of belonging in everybody that he met. For me, the Israel Ride and the Arava Institute ultimately reflect that same belief in the unity of our community. Everybody here, beyond Guy's family, is an Israel Rider now. I think you know how amazing the ride is, the difference made by our crew and our staff, But I hope you've also come to realize that the real secret of the Israel Ride is the community that we've become a part of and the lessons that we learn from our fellow riders. For me, one of those lessons came on the Shabbat morning of my first Israel Ride. That was in 2005. Another first-time rider told the story of what it meant for him to be doing the Israel Ride 1 year after cancer surgery. He spoke of what it meant to be alive, to be challenging himself, and to be giving back to the community. In 2010, and again in 2012, that story meant a huge amount to me as I had to navigate my own way through cancer diagnosis and treatment. My family, my friends, the Israel Ride community were there every step of the way. But throughout, as I was going through my treatment in the United States, Guy was really in a parallel world here in Israel. His family and friends were there. They were always by his side. People he had touched, his work as a tour guide, they reached out to him. They prayed across the world. As Arlene mentioned, when he needed a bone marrow transplant, there were literally bone marrow drives across the world. And I think it's noteworthy that some of those bone marrow drives have saved lives since, because once you register, if they do find a match for you, they come back. Throughout it all, Guy's spirit never faltered. The last time I saw him in 2012, shortly after the Israel Ride, he was still on his chemo. I had finished my treatment, was doing very well. At the time, we were both doing very well. As Arlene already explained, that changed quickly after that. We prayed throughout for a miracle. That I'd had the good fortune twice, but sadly that did not work out. My hope, the hope of my family, the hope of the many people, hundreds of people who contributed to help us build this, is that it continues Guy's lessons and his impact. I hope it will be a classroom in which they build a community that's excited and passionate about Israel, its place in the world, its place in the region, and a place where in the midst of the conflict and distrust that we see throughout the region, people will remember that there is no despair and will work to build a better future together. And for Guy's family, his young children, I hope it'll be a place where they can find that his spirit and vitality live on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David and Arlene. I've been asked to blog by the Arava Institute during my stay here. 2 weeks ago, I took my Bible and the environment class up to the Uvda Valley, and we were met by Uzi Avner, an extraordinary archaeologist. And I wrote, at one of the sites, Uzi spoke to us about the change from building in the round to building with 90-degree square angles. Nomads, he explained, tend to build in the round. Some of the ancient sites we were looking at, as well as yurts, igloos, and teepees from other nomadic cultures. While more settled people, he told us, build their buildings more at square angles. In the Uvda Valley, there are also examples of such ancient structures with square angles representing settled communities. Why the difference? Nomads roam to the rhythm and flow of nature. The shape of nature, for the most part, is more curved. Settled communities have greater impact on nature as they try to make changes to serve their needs. Building with square angles represents an attempt to change and control nature. The interesting thing is that we tend to feel better in buildings that have curved walls and spaces. Scientists and psychologists have much to say about this very human dynamic. We are also reminded of the shape of the round and curved in our world and universe as the supermoon is rising as we speak. The closest in almost 69 years, it appears 14% bigger and 30% brighter. We will not experience another supermoon until November 25th, 2034. A prayer. Master of the universe, Ribono Shel Olam, may this structure be a place, a makom of enlightenment, where the light of education will always shine. May its open 360 degrees say all are welcome as Abraham and Sarah modeled that for all of us. May its shade create the right protection, safety, and comfort for those conversations that will take place under this roof. May the memory of Guy always shine through the classes, events, and conversations that will take place here till the next supermoon in 2034 and beyond. And let us say, Amen.